Hello, thank you for joining us for today's Ask the Pet Food Pro. I'm Debbie Phillips Donaldson, Editor-in-Chief of Pet Food Industry and Pet Food Forum. Ask the Pet Food Pro is a series of expert chats brought to you by Pet Food Forum and the editors of Pet Food Industry. You can find our content at petfoodindustry.com. Most of these chats address a specific area of pet food manufacturing or formulation or safety, something similar. Today we have a special edition, a fireside chat with a leader in pet food, Yvonne Hsu, president of Hill's Pet Nutrition. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you for having me, Debbie.
Thank you. And today's discussion will be moderated by Chloe DeVita, Director of Growth for the Pet Sustainability Coalition and a member of Women in Pet Food Leadership. Welcome to you too, Chloe.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'll hand this off to Chloe in just a minute, but just a few more announcements. This chat is brought to you by Women in Pet Food Leadership, a program that connects and empowers women and allies in the pet food industry through events like this, plus mentorship and networking. In terms of the housekeeping, some of you submitted questions beforehand. We appreciate those and we'll try to get them to them as we can. Otherwise, you've all been muted, and so we ask that you please enter your question or comment in the chat box, and we will be monitoring those and going through them as we can. Finally, this chat is being recorded. You can access the recording starting in about a week at petfoodforumevents.com. Click on the About tab at the top of the page, then select Ask the Pet Food Pro from the drop-down menu. So with that, Chloe, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and hello, everyone, and welcome. As Debbie mentioned, I am Chloe DeVita, your host for this fireside chat. And today we are incredibly fortunate to have Yvonne here, the president of Hill's Pet Nutrition, to talk all about leadership. And Yvonne has had an outstanding career with 25 years at Colgate-Palmolive and Hill's Pet Nutrition, along with degrees from Cornell. She has advanced through diverse marketing and innovation roles, including an international assignment in Australia, and culminating in her recent appointment as global president after serving as president and GM of the US. Yvonne, we are so thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to you about your leadership journey, the lessons you've learned, your vision for the future, everything under the sun when it comes to leadership. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I'm so excited to be here with everybody and just honored to be asked.
Well, let's start at the beginning. It always seems like a good place to start. So you have had quite the career. So if we kind of go back to earlier in your career, what would you say sparked your interest in marketing, CPG, and some of your initial aspirations?
Yeah, so I did go to Cornell, as you said. I was a psychology major. I was really interested in basically what made people tick, right? And understanding human behavior.
Yeah.
And once I graduated, was not sure exactly what I was going to do, but made my way into advertising. I thought psychology, I could leverage this in advertising, thinking about how to market. And so that's ultimately the direction that I took. I loved being on the advertising side. I loved the creative aspect of it. Ultimately, I had decided, though, that I wanted to drive the whole brand, right? And not just a component of it. And so that is what took me down the marketing road and how I ended up at Colgate-Palmolive 25 years ago. But it was really that love of psychology that is where it all started. And then as I was on the Colgate-Palmolive side, Colgate-Palmolive is often thought of as the big oral care brand that we are across the globe, right? We are something like 2/3 of every household. We have awareness levels that reach almost 100%. What people didn't know is that we also had another brand called Hill's Pet Nutrition. And, as you learn about it internally, it's one of those brands that you really, really want to work on because it is so purpose-driven. And so when I had the opportunity, I was really excited about it.
So yes, I love that you brought up the purpose of it all, because I could see that through line in you just choosing to go from psychology to marketing and advertising to wanting to be more involved in the brand, because there's a little bit of wanting to be mission focused and vision focused with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that just brings in leadership, right? So we think about that vision early on. What would you say your key influences or experiences that you had that really shaped your leadership style from that journey?
I wish I could come up with something that's a little bit more original, but I think I would have to credit my parents. My parents both are originally from China, came to the United States, lived the American dream. They were serial entrepreneurs. In fact, they had 7 businesses before they found
Oh.
some success. And so I was often free labor when I was in high school and college. So it really came to learning the business. My parents really instilled they needed the help and they thought it was important that I learned all aspects of the business. And they also felt because I was the boss's kid, so to speak, it's important for me to figure out how I relate to others that work for my parents, but then also how do I gain respect and find that commonality, right? And those are really great lessons to be able to shape how I lead in the future, which is make sure that you're always leading with empathy, that you're listening, that you have a real understanding of the value and the impact that people have.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the free labor. I'm familiar with that. I think many of us are, but you do, like you mentioned, there's so much to learn in that.
Absolutely.
You just mentioned impact. So when we think about, the lessons that you learned and the impact you wanted to have, what would you say is the most significant lesson you learned that tied to an approach at Hills for impact?
Yeah, I've had the fortune of being on the Colgate-Palmolive company for 25 years now. This is my
Mhm.
25th anniversary. I have always been a marketer. And so I have progressed through brand marketing, innovation, shopper marketing, global marketing. It was when I was in global marketing, I had an opportunity, which was to bring more of a new to world innovation to market. And
Mm.
so they already had the technology. It was my role to come up with what is the concept, bring this new product to launch.
Mhm.
I spent an entire year doing this, right? And there was a little bit of a deadline because of what our contractual obligations and needing to move forward. And we did, we did multiple rounds of testing, we did focus groups, we understood, we did a lot of technical development, we worked on the formula. And at the end, it all came together with a simulated market test. And it's when you have the concepts paired with the actual product prototype, you get
Mhm.
usage, and then you get, kind of a score on the potential. It was the lowest score I have ever gotten on any new product.
Mm.
And the way working at a big company like ours, it's often easy to default to just talking about how you are going to make this better, right?
Mhm.
Trying to lead with good news, even though it didn't do well. What are we going to do? How are we going to salvage this? And the learning, and so we presented this to the CEO at the time, and we're talking about the results. And I remember him saying very distinctly to me, it's time to move on. Like, this isn't working. And it really highlighted to me this was a real risk. It wasn't just me that was dedicated to this project. We had put a real bet against this. And he was okay in that moment, given all the facts and the data, to say, yeah, it's okay. We move on, right? And
Mhm.
so the lesson that I got from that was you can take risks. You should be transparent about the risk you're taking and, the potential outcomes, but always learn from those. Don't think about them as failures, think about them as learnings. And how do you then apply that so that you get to better outcomes in the future?
Mhm. I love that lesson. It sounds like you learned it in a very significant way.
Yes, exactly. Fortunately, it's worked out.
Yeah, and something like that often translates to the day to day in really minute ways. What would you
Yes.
say are some of the ways that you actively apply that lesson in day to day leadership?
Yeah, day-to-day leadership, that I always think about it as how do we become dispassionate in the sense of when we're making decisions that those are really data driven and fact based. You won't always have perfect information, but then you use your knowledge of the category, your knowledge of the business, your knowledge of the brand, and you apply those two things together to make the best decisions. But then it's okay to say when something is not working, a strategy is not working, an approach is not working, the team as it's working together is not working, right? It's okay to embrace those moments, but then to also think about, how are we going to pivot? What have we learned from this? And how are we going to make that better?
The pivot.
Yes, it's the pivot.
It is. And, they got it right on Friends so many years ago. Pivot, pivot, pivot.
I am old enough to remember that. Wow.
I don't know if I just revealed both our ages.
Or we could just say it's in the reruns.
It is. There you go. It is absolutely in the reruns. Okay, so I just have to say we're like just over 10 minutes in, and you've already dropped so many important takeaways and lessons, from leading with empathy, from learning as you go and learning by doing, to understanding risk and the impact it can have, and how that's important in not just taking it, but the lessons you learn from it and bringing that forward. So looking at all of that, what would you say was an unexpected turning point, or maybe other challenge that you had to navigate in your career in
Yeah.
leadership?
Absolutely. There are so many that are going to come at you. And I always like to say, think about the experiences that you have and how do you learn from that. And
Yeah.
so one of them was, as I have three kids. They're 21, 18, and 17. And I married my college sweetheart. So we have also been married 25 years.
Amazing.
So we're talking about professional life, but so much of what you're navigating is your personal life also. And I think I had just come back from having my second child, and they said, okay, we're going to put you into a brand new discipline within marketing called shopper marketing. And I was
Oh,
like, what is shopper marketing? How do I figure that out? Right. And there wasn't so much change management in place. And so it was up to people like me that were placed into these roles to figure it out and work through the ambiguity. I had a meeting, my very first meeting after that, with a senior leader. And I was like, okay, well, what do I think she would want to see? And I pulled
Mhm.
together a deck of insights, and I talked about, here's then what the implications are for us in the retail space. And at the end of it, she said, hmm, next time I'd appreciate if you told me things I didn't know. And I was like, oh gosh. Oh, that was terrible, right? And it was
Yeah.
that moment that really helped me unlock something within myself, which is, instead of trying to anticipate, you always have to do that too, but
Mhm.
anticipate and gear what I'm saying to what I think that person wants, to what do I think is right for the business? What did I think was right for the role? And be an advocate for that, right? You have
Yeah.
to tailor your argument for the person or the audience you're presenting to, but it should still be your vision of what you think is right. Because ultimately, we're hiring people because we value their strategic thinking, we value their experience, we value their ability to lead teams, right? And so I kind of lost that a little bit. So that was a really good reminder for me of, I need to start thinking about the value and impact I have by what I think is right for the business, because really no one is as close to it as I am.
Yeah. The idea, everything you're saying reminds me of the idea of bringing your own perspective to
Yes,
the problems, the solutions,
absolutely.
and it sounds like that was another important lesson to learn.
Yes, without a doubt.
I feel like in many careers, probably many people watching, we've been through that, where it's
Yes.
had that moment of, oh, because would you say, and it's probably an earlier career thing, you kind of go into it with this, like, I want to be seen as smart and like I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That,
Absolutely. You want to be seen as smart You want to be seen as what you're doing. But
Mhm.
I also think, for at least for myself, maybe I shouldn't generalize, but I have friends that we've talked about this. I also feel the need to please
Mhm.
sometimes. And so that often puts yourself second to
Mhm.
whomever it is that you are talking to, right? And that
Mhm.
again is one thing where you want to think about less pleasing and more about how are you influencing, which I
Mhm.
think shifts kind of the focal point to yourself versus the other person, right? It's not what the other person wants. It's how can I use data, the arguments that I can make, right? What I think that person is trying to get out of this in
Mhm.
order to get an outcome that I think is best for the business.
Yes, I like that shift. Shift from pleasing to influencing.
Yes.
I
I think it's a really, really hard one. It's one that has taken me a long time to kind of work through. It's something I have to tell you, every time I come into a new role, it's something I still have to practice, right? It still doesn't come naturally to me. So it is one that I share with others.
Yes, I feel like a significant portion of women find that as we tend to be in the roles of trying to make everything okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that one resonates quite deeply. Thank you for the
Yes,
reminder. I think I
for
needed.
sure.
Oh, okay. So in all of that and in the lessons you learned, the lessons you're still learning, I mean, I think that's probably an important thing to always put a pin in when we have these conversations about leadership, is it's not
Yeah.
like you've learned it all, right? You're always learning.
Far from it.
Yeah, yeah. So in the lessons you have learned and in the journey you've had, what would you say has been your proudest moment where you really felt like you helped empower others?
Yeah, I'll tell you a moment where one of the things I'm probably most proud of, I came into the business 7 years ago,
Mhm.
and we in the US, we do a program called Clear the Shelters. Now, we've had a long, long history of supporting shelters in the US, and we do it on the global level as well. But in the US specifically, we have a very wide shelter network. And so we thought about how do we elevate this purpose, right? How do we externalize this a little bit more? And so we started Clear the Shelter, and it's one of the programs that I am most proud of. I didn't create it, but I championed it, I supported it, right? We made sure that it was something that we really nurtured.
Mhm.
We've done it now for the last 7 years, and we have helped over 1 million pets get adopted through this, right? We partner with shelters across the country, but it is the truest example I can give you of where we live our purpose. And that is what I'm so proud of. We have
Mhm.
hundreds of employees that come out and volunteer their time on a weekend to be able to provide our new pet parent kits out there to support the shelter in what they're trying to do. And so that is one where I feel like when you can have your purpose and business come together in that way, th- everybody feels good about that. And then everybody can feel that they have ownership, that this is their brand, their business as well. And I feel like that is really leads to great empowerment.
Absolutely. And that is full circle back to what you said at the beginning about wanting to have that sort of mission focused
Yes.
aspect to your work. That's a perfect example of that. I love that program. Actually, I remember when you started it, when Hills began it, and being really excited by the potential impact. And now looking
Yes.
back and seeing what it has done, it's definitely amazing. What a way to rally people behind the brand and the mission.
Exactly. And I'll just give you one small aside. In the time that I have been here, because of Clear the Shelters, I now have 3 pets. So I am also part of the population that has helped get us to well over 1 million pets adopted now. I have Max, who's 7. Um,
Oh,
our dog Max, who's a half pit bull, half miniature pinscher, and then we adopted 2 kittens about a year and a half ago during Clear the Shelter when we were there volunteering. And Annie and Asher, who are litter mates. It's great. It's so great now to have dogs and cats.
I love it. You are literally clearing the shelters.
We are literally doing our part to clear the shelters.
That's fantastic. And a pit bull mixed with a miniature pinscher I must see this.
I always think, that was an interesting one. We have a partnership with Embark, which does
Yeah.
the DNA
Yep.
testing for dogs. So I was able to do the test. And when the results came back, I was expecting lab retriever, only to find out I could not be further from
Yeah.
accurate there.
Oh, that's amazing. What lucky pets to live in your home.
Sometimes.
So, all of that, the clear the shelters, empowering your team, those are fantastic initiatives. When it comes to just the culture that you support in your team members, a culture of growth, of empowerment, what would you say are the strategies you use to sort of keep that kind of thing alive in the day-to-day, in the campaign to campaign, and over the years?
Yes, I think that's a great question, right? And I think that there's no one answer to empowerment. I believe that empowerment is very much two-way, right?
Mhm.
Between a manager and an employee. And the reason for that is I like to say I have felt empowered at Hills and the broader Colgate-Palmolive organization basically my whole career, right?
Mhm.
However, I know that other people don't always feel that way. And so in this role, it's really important to me, and as I've progressed through leadership roles, is to make sure that people do feel empowered. It's
Mhm.
really important to me. I think that when people feel empowered, actually you get to better business results. And so your actions have to match your words in that case, right? And so I try to be overt sometimes about decision making, which is, this is a decision that you could make versus me, right? I don't need to make this decision, but having that clarity over what decisions I need to make versus others, and
Mhm.
also making sure that people understand with the decisions comes accountability, right? There are two
Mhm.
sides of it, right? Having the freedom to do that, but also the accountability component. It is one of those things that it takes time to build.
Mhm.
And of course, underlying all of that has to be trust, right? Trust
Mhm.
that you say what you mean and that
Mhm.
your actions have that true intent.
Yes. I love that you brought accountability into that because I think sometimes when we talk about empowering, we fluff it up a little bit into just this positive thing with these feelings. And there is an aspect like we're most empowered when we actually are completing and impacting, which means
Yes.
you have to have accountability. So that I love that. I hope somebody's taking notes and writing down all of your quotes because I need them.
Chloe, we're flattering me way too much here.
Oh, it's easy to do. So thank you for that. Okay, so empowerment, we've talked on so many different things with leadership and settings. Let's talk a little bit about navigating moments of bias or potentially being underestimated, especially for women in leadership roles, right? There's moments in time that can be utilized to drive actual change, to sort of bring to light things that need to be changed. But how would you say you've navigated those moments of whether bias, underestimation, just needing to address those topics?
Yes. I mean, Chloe, listen, I am an Asian American female. And
Mhm.
so that is part of,
Yeah.
that is part of my life,
Mhm.
experiencing that. I have gotten feedback through my career that I am too nice, that
Mhm.
I maybe not tough enough. I think my family would disagree in case any of them are watching, that I can be. And so it's one of those things that, again, I have to be really conscious about how I show up, right?
Yeah.
And so making sure that I don't like to speak just to have a share of voice. I like to speak when I can add value,
Mhm.
but to be able to add value is not just being heard or not waiting for someone to finish so you can just make a point. I do
Yeah.
think it is doing the homework, making sure you're prepared, making sure you have an understanding of the issue, and also actively looking, actively listening, because when you do that, I think then you can really fully be connected and engaged in a discussion so that you
Mhm.
can add value, right? And so strategies that I look at are, sometimes when there's silence is to say, to make the obvious point, but get things started, right? Because I see some of my counterparts doing that. And
Mhm.
then also, sometimes it's there are disparate comments that have been going on. They don't always agree, is to speak towards the end to make sure you're summarizing that and trying to then elevate and move things forward, right? So those are things that I personally work towards, but it is always the big takeaway is to make sure you're prepared, you're really actively listening, and that you are, as you speak, is to always think about the value and the impact again that you can have on a conversation or a decision.
Mm. That active listening is such an important lesson that I think everybody needs to hear. But I know, when you mention not just speaking to, waiting for your moment to say the thing you've been thinking about versus actually listening and responding and adding to the conversation, that really resonates because I know that's something that can be hard as a woman to do.
Yes.
Especially in the pet industry, because one of the things we all know is that the CPG leadership is more male dominated. And we need, in some ways, to meet them where they're at, to
Yes.
be bold, be credible in the room. So you just gave us some strategies to do that. Do you have anything to add that is maybe specifically for women in those rooms on how to show up, right? So active listening, adding the conversation. Is there any other tools you bring just to be in that room and feel like you're contributing at the level that you can contribute, but also that you need to show up with?
Yeah, no. As I said, I think the biggest part I think is to make sure that you're prepared, that you have an understanding of the topic, that you feel like you are well versed to be able to contribute. The other is to think about whether or not you need to bring alliances into the room, right?
Mhm.
People that you can amplify that will also help amplify your voice, right? And so again, that comes to influence. Don't be afraid to have those hallway conversations of, hey, we're going into this meeting. Here's what I think about the topic. How do you think about it? Not only will it show that you're demonstrating your interest in what somebody else has to thinks about a topic or what they have to say, but it also gives you information about kind of what are the perspectives that are going to be in the room, right? And so just in addition to the other things that I mentioned is thinking about building those alliances as you go into those meetings that you feel like you want to make a big impact in.
I love that, alliances. I'm going to remember that one. So I'm going to write that down too. When it comes to, so to add another little layer on that, is there anything specific you would say to a young woman, somebody who's just starting, maybe isn't feeling the confidence to even make those alliances but has to step into those rooms and be a part of the workforce around them? Is there something you would say to that type of woman?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you should always feel like you can ask for is help, right?
Mm,
So if you think, sometimes that can be in the form of mentors, right? I always, feel a little conflicted because I think sometimes it's hard just to have a cold mentor that you don't know
right.
come help you. I've often gravitated more towards people that I feel very comfortable with, that I have a natural affinity with or
Mhm.
towards, to be more in that mentor role. But I think it's okay to say, hey, I recognize this is an area I'd like to get better at. What company resources do we have that are going to help me in speaking up more, in presenting better, in doing XYZ skill that you recognize is really important for success, right? That then shows you recognize where you have development areas and you are asking and in some way, right? Demanding that the company help you do that too, right? There's a partnership in your development. It's not just all on the individual.
Yeah. Such a simple thing, and yet so significant, just asking for that help.
Yes, ask others. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a group of women that I've worked at in the company for a long time. We are very close friends, but they are also my sounding board. When I have problems, not business problems, but just problems navigating in the workplace, I often turn to them and go, "Hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Do you have any advice for me?" Right? So
Mhm.
coworkers, friends, they can also kind of help you through that for those periods because sometimes it just takes another perspective to
Yeah.
be able to kind of help you kind of see through whatever it is that you're seeing as a barrier.
Yep, absolutely. We can all get in our own heads for sure.
Yeah, that is for sure.
For sure. So you've already mentioned the idea of work-life balance and that they go hand in hand. Work things and personal life things are integrated. So you are now leading at a very global level, and that comes with many demands. I can imagine it's not just wake up one day is just like the next. Every day is probably different. So as you are approaching the balance of that work-life integration across that, what is it that you're doing? How do you approach that and ensure that I'm sure it's something you're always still learning, but what is it that you do to try to stay on top of it?
Yeah, I'm so glad, first of all, that you called it an integration because I think balance is sometimes a misnomer. There are things that are going to be more important than others at different points in time, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's key is knowing what those things are for yourself, right? For me,
Mhm.
as I said, I have 3 kids, my husband works, and so it is, first of all, being very clear with your partner as to the roles that you will play, because I think when you're not clear is where kind of resentment can build up. And so having clarity and managing expectations the way you do at work is the same thing you need to do at home. For
Mhm.
me, what was non-negotiable was also I didn't want to miss out on the big moments in my
Mhm.
children's lives, right? And I remember I was in a global program and we were meeting the CEO, and it was the first day of kindergarten for my youngest child. And they were like, "We really need you to be there. We want everybody in the program, and we're going to take a picture and all this." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not missing the first day of kindergarten. I will never get that back." Right. So
Yeah.
knowing what those are for yourself, right? I try to be it. The dance performances, the sporting events that are really critical, but parent teacher conferences, I've been traveling and I've called in at all
Mhm.
different times of day so I can be on parent teacher conferences,
Yep.
right? So knowing what those things are, I
Mhm.
think are important, so that you can say, "You know what? This is my boundary. This is important to me. I'm going to manage that." I've never ever had a manager that was like, "No, that's
Mhm.
not okay. You need to be here." Right. But I
Mhm.
also, on the conversely, I also know what those big business meetings are, right? I've got to be here for the budget review or a strat plan discussion, right? And so I also know how to navigate that with my personal life as well. So I think it's really important you understand the non-negotiables. You set the right boundaries and expectations with your
Mhm.
leadership, right? So that there's an understanding. And then the other one is to be fully present, right? Whether
Mhm.
you are at work or you are at home, to be present. I make a point to really try to put my phone down so
Yeah.
I can engage in the conversation at home, right? I think about it as I've taken this time to be here. I want to be present. And the same goes for when you're at work. Like there are lots of things that come up, obviously, but to be present at work also and just, you know, be in the moment. I think it's really important.
It ties right back to everything you said about being prepared and how you show up, no matter whether it's work or personal.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, my kids don't care that I'm
Mhm.
the global president, right?
Nope.
I'm mom, and they want to make sure that I am there for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's also, as a leader, it's so important to be the example of those decisions and of those
Right.
choices so that the team under you and those who you are leading feel empowered to lead that way for others.
That's right.
Yeah. So amazing. I love all of that. Okay. When it comes to advice, let's get into some
Oh,
juicy advice. And we've been
okay.
dropping advice the whole time, but here we are in specifically the pet food industry, right? It's a constant
Yes.
evolving industry. When it comes to aspiring leaders within the field, that this field here, who want to make a significant impact and drive innovation, what advice would you give them in this lovely industry that we're living in?
Absolutely. I mean, is there any better industry
Yeah.
than ours? It's dynamic, it's fun, it's purposeful. Like
Yep.
everyone should do it.
Yes.
But if I were to
Everyone
give,
should do it.
everyone should do it. But if I were to give some advice, first of all, have more pets, right?
Mhm,
Go out
absolutely.
there. There are a lot of pets that need homes. Go out, adopt more pets.
Yeah.
But that is also to help you to understand the human experience and that
Mhm.
experience of being a pet parent and what motivates pet parents and what they're worried about, right? We were in a meeting earlier talking about moments that matter. And I was sharing, I'm one of those parents that feel pet parents that feels the guilt every day because now in the post-COVID world, nobody's home
Yeah.
during the day. And so I'm like, my dog and my 2 cats, I feel so guilty leaving them for like 8 or 9 hours. And so I get they get a treat every time I walk out the door, right? But understanding kind of that human behavior on a scaled basis, not just an
Yeah.
individual, right? Helps you to understand how to communicate better, helps you to understand what innovation can help solve for those pain points, can help you partner better with, in our case, with vets and vet healthcare teams, partner better with our retailers. And so I think it's really understanding that human experience and the bond between pet parents and their pets.
Mm. And it is a bond.
It is a bond. Absolutely. It is a bond.
It
There's
is a
no doubt
bond.
about that.
So in all of that and bringing those qualities forward, do you have any tips or recommendations on ways people could up-level their skills or actually step into that with a little bit more confidence?
Yeah, I think one of the things is always to be curious. I think it's
Mhm.
really important. If you don't understand the why behind things, go figure it out, right?
Yeah.
There are so many ways. I'm not a huge reader. It is, there's something about a textbook that just shuts me down. But I'm an interpersonal learner. So I love to learn from other people. I love to listen to podcasts, right? And so continue to be curious because that is a skill that will continue to serve you well, I believe. I
Mhm.
think there's also a second, I talk a lot about this to the team, is there's so much you can focus on, but there's
Mhm.
a finite amount of time for you, the team, the company. And so make sure as leaders you have a real clarity of your vision, of the purpose, right? In our case, we feel confident that we know that, but
Mhm.
also in communication and setting those expectations. So having clarity is a really important one and practicing that.
Mhm.
And then, of course, my favorite, active listening, because
Mhm.
that always helps you in terms of how to navigate is really listening to people, listening to our customers, listening to vets, right? Is to make
Mhm.
sure you listen. If we had our way, we would continue to cultivate ways that we listen to our pets better.
Yeah. Oh, yes, active listening to everyone, your pets.
To everyone, both verbal and nonverbal.
Oh, I love that you brought that up because I actually think the nonverbal aspects are so important to tune into.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
fantastic. Okay, well, as we are wrapping up our interview part, we have already some questions here from the audience that were submitted ahead of time. If anyone watching has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll be sure to get to them. But we have a few good ones here for you, Yvonne, that I think I would like to talk through. And one flows very much out of everything we've just discussed. One of our audience members would like to know what is something that you would tell your younger self to change or do better?
That's a great one. I think what I would tell my younger self is your career is, this is cliche, right? It is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Mm,
Early on, I would compare myself to my peers and why did get a promotion and I didn't? And I think you can get caught up easily in that. And so I would advise my younger self to think about every opportunity, every role that you have in terms of what's the experience that you want to get. I talk about it as impact too, is the impact that you have on a role, on a team, on an organization, right? How do you leave your footprint? It's a little bit more about legacy. And so thinking about a collection of experiences that help you to become the leader that you are in the future are what I would say where I would weight things a little bit more, right? As sitting here in the role I have today, I'm like, oh, it would have been great to have a sales rotation, or it would have been
mm,
great to have like a customer service and logistics rotation. Like it would just help me, I think, be a more well-rounded leader in the role that I have today, but I've had to do that more on the job, right? And so
mm.
those would be what I would advise.
Oh, write that down, somebody quote it. Let's get it out into the world. Because you're right, it's one of those, I feel like we often need the simple reminders
Yes.
just throughout our careers. Okay, so this is another one we got that is a little more industry specific. So looking at the organization, right? How do you become a data-driven organization while still placing emphasis on being customer-driven? So kind of balancing those two things.
Yeah, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, right?
Mm,
I think your data, your facts, they should help you to be more customer centric. And so becoming data driven to me doesn't remove emotion. It just makes the recommendations, the solutions, the plans, the strategies you have that much stronger because it's based on facts. And so, one of the things I loved is we were going through our journey early on in terms of how to become more data driven is to simple. It's actually, I think, a practice that Google has. As you get recommendations or you have to make a decision, it's asking people what's the data behind that.
mhm.
Again, you're asking for data, but it's poking at the why, right? Just why. And do
Mhm.
you understand why we think that it will work? So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, yeah. I've always appreciated how data can tell a story if you look at it right. And I think that's where the customer side comes in, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah, how they come together. Okay, these are good ones. Thank you, everybody, for submitting these questions. All right, here's another one. So there's someone here who is a newly graduated PhD starting to apply, wants to be in the industry, and they're wondering if there is anything professionally they should do now to improve their self while applying. Is there any recommendations?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, all the kudos to people who get PhDs. That is a long road, right?
Yes, agree.
So I think you've already done a lot to make yourself an
Yeah.
attractive candidate. What I always think is really important as you are any candidate, right? PhD or not, is to understand what the company's business strategies are, right? It's usually public, what they say their strategic plan is, where they want to grow, and understand then you as an individual, the skill set, the experiences, right? The strengths that you have. How is that going to help the company get to where they want? Right.
Mm,
And so understanding the role that you can play, how you bring that, how you can shape a role. I think that always impresses me when I talk to candidates, when they have done the research on what it is that we're trying to achieve.
mm, yes, that is a good one because It's all things you'll need to know in that role, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. There's one here that's very industry focused. I want to get to some things I'm seeing in the comments. So one here is from Samantha, who says she works with majority of men and she has a hard time feeling like she has a true mentor to lean on when she needs reinforcement. How have you been able to find that relationship with those that have male dominance characteristics? I think that's a good way to put it, Samantha.
That is a good one, right? I think, listen, that can be a difficult question.
Yeah.
If I put myself into Samantha's shoes, even though it's male dominated, are there ways that you can find commonalities, right? That you can develop those relationships instead of taking the group as just a group of men? Can you think about them as individuals, and how do you create that camaraderie, that affinity with individuals one on one, right? So that it doesn't become just an overwhelming group when you go into a setting. And so invite somebody for a coffee chat or lunch or something where you can get to know them a little bit more and find the places where, again, you can see opportunities for you to work together a little bit more closely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. That is definitely, it can feel hard when you're in that situation.
It can absolutely feel hard. And I don't want to stereotype. One of the ways I happen to really love sports, it's always easy to do some sports talk.
Straight to the end zone. All right.
It's easy for us. We're in Kansas City. So,
Yeah,
the
you've
love
got a
of the
lot.
Chiefs and the Royals runs deep.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that. Hopefully that is helpful, Samantha. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to, there's two more questions I want to hit on at least, and then I'll keep watching the chat. But this is a little more industry wide. So what do you think the greatest challenges are for the pet food industry to grow and scale in the next 5 years?
Yeah. We have been thinking a lot about this, right? It's a challenging time in the industry as we believe that the pet population, is flat to slightly declining. We are in a moment where we're seeing, as you know, right, growth in cats and small dogs. We're an industry that's built more for large pets. And so I think that's going to be kind of the challenge, is to see where the hockey puck goes there. We have a belief in the humanization trend being here to stay. And how do we continue to meet the needs of those pet parents? And I think some of those solutions will have less scale, right? And how do you reimagine your network to have more flexibility? How do you get to more of that customization and personalization? I think those are going to be where the potential challenges are.
Yeah, yes. And 5 years is a long time as we've seen
It
what's
is.
changed in the last 5.
Exactly. That's why
Yeah.
everyone adopt more pets.
Yes, please. More pets. Everyone needs more pets. Okay, so all of this kind of fits with the question that I'm going to close on before we ask you for some takeaways, your closing remarks. So data, we've talked a lot about that, or marketing to the customer with data. There's also a level of intuition and experience that comes into play, especially for someone like you who's been, you've got 25 years in now at Colgate. You've been, at Hills for quite a long time. You're in pet. You've seen change. So you've got some experience and some intuition that just lives within you. So how do you marry that with your decision making when it comes to data? Is there ever those moments where you're like, the data's leaning one way, but in my experience, this, and now you've got to sort of bridge those things together?
You do. And I usually, when those things happen, right, where the data says one thing and the intuition and experience say another, I think it's really, really important. we went through all sorts of agility training a few years ago. And one of the things that I like to do is when I feel like, I'm not sure, is to rely on the other folks in the room and
Mhm.
the people that know the brand really well, know the business, understand the data, and see where everybody's at. I mean, that actually does a lot to influence me, is that we don't have to reach a consensus. Like, not everybody has to agree. Actually, I like it when some people don't agree, because I feel like that gets you to better decision making.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when you're really not sure, is to poll everybody, see where everybody's at,
Mhm.
hear why or why not, and then make the best decision you can from there. But they're
Mm.
hard moments, right? Sometimes that's part of risk taking.
Yeah. Well, that is 100% full circle, because you just brought in, not only at the beginning when you talked about being confident in sharing your own perspective, but you also mentioned active listening several times. And now that active listening plays into hearing other people's perspectives in order to create what needs to be the full company perspective. So that is a nice little bow on everything there. I love it. Well, Yvonne, as we're getting to the end here, I would love to just give you a minute to leave everyone with whatever you feel like will empower, the hundreds of people who are watching.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm really humbled to be asked to participate. Sometimes wake up and go, oh, I am like a senior leader, right? So sometimes it surprises me. So I really always appreciate being asked. I appreciate everybody that has joined or will join to listen to my perspective. I'm happy for you to reach out to me. I'm always happy to connect. It is an industry that I feel really passionate about. I want others to join. Tell your friends about the industry, whether it's at Hills, whether it's somewhere else. It's such a dynamic, interesting, purpose-driven industry for us to all be part of. I'm so proud to be, I'm so proud to be at Hills, but I'm so proud to be in this industry. And again, if anybody wants to connect, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. But
And
thank you,
have more
everybody. I
chats.
appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Yvonne. And thank you to everyone here who has brought great questions, who's been listening, taking notes. Please tag us. I want to find all the takeaways, because it was so many amazing things. And thank you, Yvonne, for your time and your wisdom. I'll kick it back over to Debbie.
Thank you, Chloe.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yvonne and Chloe. That was a delightful conversation, and I learned so much. I'm going to be, even though I was part of this, I'm going to be like watching the recording again. But thank you again. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Please watch for future digital offerings from Women in Pet Food Leadership, including some in-person things at different industry events throughout the year, including Pet Food Forum. We'll be announcing those as we get them organized, so please stay tuned. And finally, just a reminder that the recording for this will be available in about a week on petfoodforumevents.com under the About tab. And again, thank you for joining us today, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day and evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.